Unmute. All right, there we go. Now I'm unmuted. You got me.
Testing, test.
Who are excited about the upcoming meeting, please hang in there with us, and we're excited too. Thanks. Bye. Tell me when you're ready. Good evening. The Climate Action Commission meeting is now called to order. Let's, Matthew, if you would please, a roll call of the commissioners who are here constituting a quorum.
Commissioner Shapiro-Nathan,
Aye.
Commissioner HINERMAN,
Here.
Vice Chair Conlon,
Here.
and Chair Morrell.
Here.
Thank you.
All other commissioners are not available at the moment, perhaps coming late or perhaps not available. We have a quorum with the four. So the first item of business is the approval of the agenda. We have been provided an agenda in advance. Do any commissioners choose to make a motion tonight to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Philip. Is there a second on this motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Cedra. We have a motion and second to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion of said motion? Looking left, looking right. Not all. I would call for a roll call vote on the motion, Matthew.
Commissioner Shapiro-Nathan,
Yes, I approve. I agree.
Commissioner HINERMAN,
Aye.
Vice Chair Conlon,
Aye.
and Chair Morrell.
Aye, and the
Thank-
motion carries
Thank you.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
unanimously. Thank you. The next segment is the comments from the public. I will read the required Brown Act statement as part of the record. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on tonight's agenda. It is recommended that members of the public keep their comments to 3 minutes or less. Under state law, unless otherwise permitted by the Ralph M. Brown Act, the merits of the matters presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the Climate Action Commission at this time. For items appearing on tonight's agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at the time that item comes up for commission consideration. Upon being acknowledged by the chair, please step to the podium, speak into the microphone, begin by stating your name, and public comments received for items on the agenda prior to the meeting can be found in the Document Center Climate Action Commission in the City of Sonoma website. Any comments received after 5 p.m. the day of the scheduled hearing will be presented to the commission with the agenda item. Is there any interest in comments from the public not on tonight's agenda items? If so, yes, sir, please step to the podium and introduce yourself to join us this evening, and thanks for being here.
Good evening, staff and commission members. My name is Armando Zimmerman. I live on West Spain Street, and I peek in on Channel 27 frequently, and I went to public meeting and so forth, I guess last fall, in preparation for the update of the general plan. So if I goof up here, you can stop me right away. But my first item was just basically just to thank all of you for the work you do. The more I watch and listen and read, the more confused I get. I'll be honest about that. This is not these items are not, in my back pocket. And the complexity of the issues that the city's dealing with, and that this commission in particular, I'm not trying to denigrate any others, but next to planning, you guys are it. So that's just a personal comment and a thank you for the hard work that you do. Now this is the one that I don't know if it interferes with the agenda or not. I did listen in on a previous meeting where budget was discussed. And I see that there's something mentioned about budget, not specific. So I don't know if I can make a comment on that or not.
Under the item when we discuss it?
Yeah, once you get to that item, we will have public comment on individual items.
Okay, maybe
including the budget item, Mr. Zimmerman, and we'd be pleased to have you make budget comments then. At the moment,
Okay.
you're expected to make comments on items
Okay.
not on tonight's agenda, which
Okay.
we welcome.
Okay. Well, then I will wait for that to come up. My third point is I listened in on again Channel 27 on, I believe it was the last city council meeting, and there was some discussion, or quite a bit of discussion, about the use of the city fields, et cetera, by the Transcendence group. And I'm not going to comment as to whether that's a good idea or not, but I got the feeling that at least the planning up to this point. So I'm not here to second guess everything that goes on that I may not be aware of. I just got the feeling that the council was not really prepared to ask the questions that might have been asked of the presenters, the people that were in favor, etc. And I just thought that there was it just seemed to me that what was missing was coordination between other city entities, including this particular commission, in regard to preparation for that event, which, if it's successful, it's gonna draw a lot of people, a lot of car traffic, a lot of walking traffic, a lot of maybe some I don't know, a little bit adverse impacts on turf and that kind of thing. I just went back to my own thoughts when B.R. Cohn would do their music festival, and boy, there was just shuttles set up, parking set up, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe that's all going to happen. Maybe it's already in the planning. I just got the impression that it's not that well coordinated. And I will speak from my experience, 7 or 8 years on a traffic safety committee. I do not recall, I didn't bring all my minutes with me, ever being consulted about these big events. Striping Broadway, runs and bicycle things and everything else. And somehow I always felt that was kind of a downside in terms of how the planning might go into large events. So those are just my comments on that particular issue. So thank you.
And thank you. An interesting comment. Predecessor of this commission, on which some of us served, called the Community Services and Environment Commission, was reviewing a number of large items on the plaza and asking for information to be gathered about how people arrived. Single cars, EVs, gasoline cars, bus, carpool, and so on. And that didn't ever quite happen the way that prior commission was urging it to happen with respect to these large events on the plaza. So it's interesting that you would bring that back up. That's no longer a normal agenda item of this particular commission, but it's an important issue for us as part of ongoing climate action, and we're particularly interested here in developing programs for climate-smart tourism in Sonoma. We're a tourist destination. How can we be climate-smart? Is there any, Matthew, online commentary?
We're not currently doing
Not
any comments
currently.
through
All right,
Zoom.
so we will then close public. Oh, we don't do online anymore because of some of the issues that have arisen. They
Currently,
submit
yes.
their comments in writing. So there are no other comments we should consider at this time. It's closed. So I believe we'll go to the consent calendar next. This is the minutes of a special meeting of this commission in mid-April with the minutes of that meeting. Are there any commissioner comments on this item before we go to a vote to accept those minutes? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion from commissioners to accept the minutes of the Climate Action Commission special meeting of April 17th
So
of this
moved.
year. Tom, so moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Cedra has seconded. Thank you very much. A motion and a second. Is there any discussion of this motion? Seeing none, I'd call for a roll call vote. Matthew?
Commissioner Shapiro-Nathan,
Aye.
Commissioner Heinerman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Conlon,
Aye.
and Chair Morrell.
Yes, aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. So the next item this evening is item 3.1. This is a discussion of the budget for the fiscal year 2024-25 with an updated Climate Action Fund request. And we turn to Jennifer for a presentation to the Commission on this action item.
Good evening, Community Development Director Gates. So before you is just an update. So at the last meeting we had discussed a proposed budget request from the Climate Action Commission for implementation of our climate action strategies combined with tree priorities. So since that time, we did get some additional information. I did get some proposals from 2 different companies around the tree inventory, canopy assessment, and the urban forestry management plan. So I updated those numbers. So before I had just a rough 100, up to that $10,000 more dollars to 110,000. Found that the water conservation program, which specifically is cash for turf and then a laundry gray water rebate existed. Still not clear on what that is exactly, but that had a $50,000 budget. And so what I am currently recommending is that we bump the electric and compost rebate programs by $5,000 each, which give us to $30,000. Take off the water conservation program as it exists currently in the proposed budget. I'll just make sure it continues on into next year at the $50,000 mark. Again, up to the transportation and carbon sequestration amount to 110, so that rounded off the total to 145,000 instead of the original 150,000. So, and that, obviously that 145 does not include the water conservation programs. So that concludes staff's presentation, and if you have any questions, let me
Do
know.
any of the commissioners have any questions for Community Development Director Tom? Vice Chair Conlon?
Great, thank you. Yeah, I was trying to figure out the mapping between the last set of strategies and budgets and this. Appreciate that. It's helpful. And I noticed too in the minutes we just approved that it mentions trees as the budget adjustment after that was part of the motion of approval of the budget discussion last time. But I'm glad to see here it says transportation and carbon sequestration, which includes what were effectively the tree items. Going back after that discussion and reviewing the city council goals for the year, I noticed under our mandate in the carbon and the greenhouse gas mitigation and adaptation category, the council asked or identified a priority for the phrase is improving public transit, and we don't have anything, as I understand it, on this list that is going to help us map to that. So in anticipation of potentially questions from the council about this, I just thought we should discuss it tonight to see if that's within our scope of budget or if we have other plans to improve public transit.
So we did talk about this a little bit at that last meeting when we went over all the lists. And so when it comes to the transit, we do pay SCT to increase, their transit services. So that is something that we had identified as beginning discussions of what that looks like to further that. Also, as part of this year, we were going to look closer at what are the funding opportunities and what do we need to do a plan around doing our circulator. And so those are the things that we identified for this fiscal year. And right now, we don't have an amount associated with what that looks like until we start those conversations and really kind of dig into what we need to do. And so it may not be that this year we implement anything, but this year we start the conversations and get the information. And it may be that we do a mid-year budget request or something like that once we know more. But at the time, there's not enough information to actually move forward with an actual budget request.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from commissioners on this item? Sandra?
I just want to make sure I'm clear about what you're asking about just specifically. So when you're talking about the urban transit plan that reduces greenhouse gas, that's, I mean, we talked about, Jennifer just mentioned buses, but you're also talking about non-motorized transport plan as well, planning for things like corridors, pathways, things like that. Is that what you're also implying? Because that's what I hear when you say that. And I just want to make sure what I hear is what you're saying, like signal noise thing.
Sure, sure. So at our last meeting, I was talking more about those topics, and we had that discussion. And decided that under the context of the corridor plan, that was going to be helping us meet the transportation goals that we had set in our climate action strategy. So it's framed here as transportation and carbon sequestration, those two somewhat dissimilar things combined together. It's mostly tree activities, but it's tree activities that are transportation corridor targeted, is pretty much the discussion we had at our last meeting. And in addition to that, we have our active transportation planning process and our upcoming general plan circulation update, and a number of grants that the city is actively seeking for improvements to our active transportation infrastructure. I was specifically tonight addressing a new topic, which is transit, improved public transit, because it occurs in the city's goals.
Okay.
And Jennifer just explained that that element is not yet fleshed out enough for us to make a budget request. And so that's adequate, that's acceptable to me, and I know that we're just trying to get our heads, as you said, wrapped around all of this. It is complex, and we are grappling with it. And I want to just, to earlier comments from the public about the need for coordination, you know, we hear that, we understand that, and we are working diligently to do that right now. And I'm very happy, I can say I'm very happy to hear that, you know, staff is working with this commission, members of this commission, and I'm feeling somewhat optimistic we're going to start to address some of those perhaps historic coordination gaps to the best of our abilities.
Thank you, Tom and Sandra, and I would note we're on a strong trajectory to move in that direction. It's not easy, but I'm feeling, compared to struggling with these issues, we're making much more headway now in a smooth process that has public policy driving it in some positive directions. At this point, if there's any public comment on item 3.1, the discussion of the fiscal year budget. And once again, simply introduce yourself, Mr. Zipperman, so we have the entire process. Come on up and introduce yourself again and comments.
Armando Zimmerman. I live on West Spain Street. Well, I did look in on, I guess, maybe a previous meeting regarding budget. And I was thinking, I thought about that, and then I went back and reread some of the like the circulation element and the general plan. And I looked at some notes I took. I don't know if it was from a meeting. I didn't actually write down when it was, but just things that stunned me at the time. But, 66,000 daily trips within the city and adjacent communities. The percentage, I don't know how accurate it can be, but of the transportation based on fossil fuels, not electric and whatever, contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, tailpipe emissions, and stuff like that. And I'm going like, you should get a bigger budget. If to be able to make a real impact in terms of just public awareness and other, I don't know. I mean, I guess, I got 2 minutes or 1 minute to talk about it. It just seems like to me, maybe because of the street I live on, we're prisoners to the to autos, trucks, motorcycles, big commercial. There's no separation whatsoever through our residential neighborhood. And yet I looked over here in the in almost the last section of the circulation element. It says policies protect residential areas by keeping traffic speeds low and discouraging through truck traffic. How to implement that? Implement adopted traffic calming procedures through the Traffic Safety Committee. Again, from my experience on that, I hope it's improving, but very little was done during my tenure. Establish and enforce truck routes and regulations that apply to all heavy vehicles, including delivery trucks and tour buses. So basically, there's no walls. I mean, in terms of containing greenhouse gases and everything else, but they're going to affect differentially neighborhoods like mine, and they continue to do so. And things are not getting better. I looked at a city report that said in September 2017, in front of my house, in a 24-hour period, there were a little bit over 9,000 vehicle trips, both north and south, east and west, in front of my house. A year ago in March, I believe, a traffic study was done. Part of it was for speed, but it also showed that in about a 4-day period, if you don't count late at night and the overnight hours, 36,000 vehicles ran in front of my house. So the point is, how do we, as a city, how do we deal with these mammoth issues? And anyway, like I say, again, I'm not trying to put a guilt trip on this particular commission and so forth, but I think they should ask you what you need rather than as far as city, what you need rather than. It seems like you're scratching around for what you need. That's my impression, and that's all I can say.
Very appreciative of your insights. Thank you. Many of us have shared some of these comments over the years as we continue to scratch around with some successes and some frustrations. These are major issues. It's not at all clear that the city of Sonoma alone will solve America's reliance on four-wheel transport, but we are making some headway, and we are indeed concerned about these issues as a Climate Action Commission. So as you watch us over the weeks and months to come, I think and I hope you'll be pleased with the progress we're able to make in moving on this direction without expecting immediate success in this regard. We know that vehicle transport is about 65% of our total loadings of greenhouse gases, probably higher than that in the next round. Some of this is affected by the COVID period when more people stayed home. And so as we go forward with electric vehicles, as we go forward with tourist-based electric bus transport and off-site parking ideas and so on, we will be moving aggressively in this direction, and I share your frustration that it's not easy, it's not quick, I would just, in closing, note that I'm proud to have been the United States EPA official who back in the 1970s, my office brought the first diamond lane onto the freeway in Los Angeles. And we also dealt with cars being abandoned in the freeway lane as part of protests. So we've come a long way in things like a carpool lane that nobody is griping and complaining, I could use naughtier language about it these days. We've come a long way. Some of us remember. Some of us have scars, as it were, to show about some of this. And we have a long way to go, and it's a climate emergency that's facing us that wasn't quite evident with the ozone and smog issues of the 1950s and 60s and 70s in Southern California. So thank you for your comments. They're very well taken. You would like to add one more thing? Come on up. We have a large audience tonight, but we would be happy to have you join once again.
Good news. I believe it was the city manager, maybe in the last meeting, commented on the bus. Now, you said circulatory. That's not the bus that is making the rounds now that the city contributes.
That's a bus 32 that the city contributes to, as I understand it.
Yeah.
That goes up to Santa Rosa, up Highway 12.
Well, actually, I thought there was another one that was more local. Maybe I just misunderstood what he said, but he noted ridership was showed quite a bit of interest in that, and I thought that was a point in the right direction.
And one of the things, by the way, that related to this, that this commission is certainly interested in, is the impact of affordable housing here in Sonoma and the ability to have fewer of our workers have to drive long distances to get here as we build some more affordable housing. So those are the kinds of issues which are human-oriented and economic in their character, but are also deeply affecting climate and achieving our climate goals. And we're not taking public comments, so I guess that will conclude 3.1 tonight. Discussion from the commission other than
Through the chair,
public.
we'll have to formally close the public comment period.
We will close public comment and then have discussion by the commission. Thank you for your reminder, Matthew.
Thank you. Yeah, so good to hear that input. As I said earlier, I think that we are addressing some of these issues. It's going to take some time to capture the full scope of how to do that. I'd encourage Mr. Zimmerman and others who are interested in circulation in the city to attend the farmers market on, I think it's the 28th, Tuesday, the 28th, because we'll have the consultants who are doing this, the region-wide, county-wide active transportation plan update. Will be presenting their maps of the bicycle routes and the pedestrian sidewalk fixes that are prioritized and recommended for the future. And they're at the stage right now where they're taking lots of public input and making that group sensitive and aware of the issues that we have here in the town are important. And I participated with a number of my colleagues, not a quorum, but a number of my colleagues also happened to be there the other night when they presented at the community center. And it's got an initial chance to look at some of that. And so as we start working toward the update of the general plan circulation element, which is really where this stuff, as Jennifer's made clear to us before, that's where this is really going to be codified in our planning documents. So it's a little premature, and I accept this premise, that it's a little premature for us to make a premature budget request this next month of the council. And I'm actually quite optimistic to hear that the opportunity for future budget requests were flexible and we could accommodate that if there really was a demonstrated need as we move forward, implementing our response to the climate crisis that we've declared here in the city. I wanted to be sure before we moved on from this item to understand it. There's a statement here that CAC will propose new programs and ways to promote to get more participants in the water conservation program. So I thought, since that's on here, maybe we should have a brief discussion of what that might entail, and who, you know, what you know to date about this program, because I'm personally not up to speed on it, and I suspect my other commissioners may not be as well.
Is this specifically the Cash for Grass, Cash for Turf program? Jennifer, would you like to respond?
I know nothing.
Yeah.
I will be completely
go.
honest.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying, so according to what I just looked at in the budget wise, we budgeted 50,000, 17 of that has been spent. That being said, I don't know how we advertise. I don't know where we advertise. I don't know the details of the program. When we had identified the climate action strategies, with all of these programs that we have created, we have talked about the need for community education and outreach for everything. So that's where my note is that our role in that we may be not asking for the funds associated with the existing water rebate program, but we can utilize those funds and maybe expand the water rebate program, right? We can look at the rain barrels and the other things to attach to that. And the climate action outreach marketing group that we already have an ad hoc committee could develop those materials and that information for that, based on the information that maybe is collected from the group that's focused on water. Right? So we're through me, right? You guys can't talk to each other, but you can talk through me on that. So that's what that is really referencing.
And that can be an important part of our next efforts at the public engagement ad hoc, on which I do serve. I don't remember at the moment who else is on that with me. Fogelberg for one, but she's in Europe. So that's an important piece of the puzzle. It does work. Many years ago, my house got a little bit of money for some removal of grass, and we now have no grass, and so or turf or whatever I'm supposed to call it. But it's an important piece, and the rain barrels are another important piece of public engagement for people to see that that's feasible.
I'm not sure where this goes exactly.
Please go right ahead.
But the we have a lot of homeowners associations in Sonoma, and as groups, and that seems to me like a very efficient way to get to a large group of residents. And I'm not sure if the program is directed solely at residents or if homeowners associations qualify in this, but that certainly is.
I'm not sure, but I'm guessing that it's both. That's anyone who removes turf in the ways that are called for by the ordinance can qualify for a small amount of financial recompense. I mean, I think we got a couple $100 or something from removing a lot of grass years ago, turf, but we can certainly find out. But yeah, and communication through the gardening clubs is another piece of the puzzle we could be doing.
I guess my question is to understand how the program has performed in the past. If we've been oversubscribed and run out of money, or if we are just not doing enough advertising and it's just sitting there, money is just sitting there and not being spent. That would be helpful feedback for us to discuss how these existing city programs might be working. I think I raised some similar questions about the compost rebate at the city council meeting under the session discussing the potential or now agendized public hearing on the amendments or the new contract for the garbage hauler contract franchise agreement. And because there's some funding, I believe, in there around the compost giveaway programs, and I know that there was some funding originally in that budget to help with the city's underwriting of the sustainability coordinator, and so just having some transparency about where those flows are, what's already funded, what needs, where we think we could do more. That's what we're going to need at these forthcoming future meetings.
Thank you, Tom. Any other comments on this item 3.1, budget issues? It's an important topic, and we urge you to have this on the agenda for the next one as well, to next commission meeting, to review where we are with the budget, what's available, what's changing, what's making sense, and so on. I see no other interest in this. I would propose that we close discussion of 3.1. Seeing no objection, I will so move. And we'll take us now to item 3.2 in tonight's agenda, the Ad Hoc Committee reports and next steps. Jennifer.
So Ad Hoc Committee reports is going to be a standing item. The idea, and I'll share this with our members that are absent tonight as well, is that between now and our next meeting, which is in 3 months, that you guys will meet, discuss, come up with ideas, and through me, we'll, can reach the other committees and things about information that you may need or things like that. But when we come back to the next meeting, there'll be an opportunity for reports and discussions. What I'm hoping is that each group just provides me like a little memo of what you've uncovered or things that you've looked at for discussion and what the questions are that you want to have for the group. Get people's minds thinking before the meeting, and so that we have good discussion during the meeting about where we are with each one of those strategy groups and what our goals are for this year. And then we can help each other move forward with those next steps, so that when we meet again after that, we can, just follow up and just continue in that manner. So that is my recommendation. I did attach the newest ad hoc subcommittee guidelines based on your questions. We went back and I did get that updated and provided to you guys and attached those. So with that, if there's any questions around kind of what I'm hoping to see and what we can provide, I'll give, when I send you guys the email, just a reminder, hey, our meeting is this date. Here is the deadline for basically your memos to the commissioners. And then that way I can attach them to the staff report, to the agenda.
Perfect. Are there questions from commissioners? Cedros, ready to go?
I might need a reminder of which ad hocs exist in the membership. Oh, there we go.
Somebody asked that Monday night, and I said, it's in the minutes.
It's in the minutes is where I found it. Thank you.
I have notes about it as well. Tom, did you have a comment?
Thank you, I do.
I have one to follow, but I want the other commissioners to go first.
Sure. So, where are we? Ad hocs. Yes, pardon me. So, I get that it sounds like we're gonna have standing reports from the ad hocs, and your request was for us to, as an ad hoc, I guess, file in advance of the meeting, any things that we want to the other commissioners be thinking about, and then you can include those in the minutes, in the agenda in advance of the meeting. And that, I guess that does make sense to me. It does put a little bit of burden on us. Like, I noticed that we had a special meeting last month. Here we are already this month, and I wasn't able to meet with my ad hoc, given schedules and as many of the ad hocs as I had hoped to. But we'll take that back and try to make that process work. So I think that is a good way of us making the ad hocs function between these rather spread out meetings. So I like that. And then I guess I'm looking forward to tonight under this item being able to do report outs on these different ad hocs. And I think we'll just go through them is what I'm assuming we'll get to do.
I would like to do that.
And
to
so
see
that's
what
just
comments we have from ad hoc members. We have a limited number of commissioners here this evening, to be sure, but let's cover what we can, both for our own understanding and for any hundreds of public who are watching this evening.
So before we do that, are there any more questions?
Not seeing any other questions on this agenda item 3.2. Sounds like a good way to proceed in the future. And of course, it's only been a month since the last meeting because it was a special meeting, so we haven't had a lot of action, but by the next meeting we should have ad hoc action from each of the ad hoc commissions. Do we want to go through each ad hoc in some order? And I don't have it in front of me to call on it, so, and with my eyeglasses on I can read it. You get old enough, you get illiterate. So we have a Grants and Funding Commission on which I serve with both of my colleagues to my right tonight. To my knowledge, we have not met. Is there anything from the Grants and Funding ad hoc, Tom?
I can give a quick report on what's happening with grants and funding.
Yes.
So-
Excellent. Thank you, Sandra.
We have a CAL FIRE grant that we are putting in at the end of the month, May 30th, that myself, and it was kicked off with Commissioner Morell and Commissioner Donnelly from PROS, working with Jennifer Gates. And the status of it is we have a working draft that has to get a couple of boxes ticked with Jennifer Gates, and is today, this afternoon, actually, I finished my last meeting with CAL FIRE to go through the working draft. May 15th, a resolution we will presumably have City Council provide a resolution that must be uploaded with this grant application. And so the idea is that this is a planning grant only, and it provides for urban forest management planning. The first thing you do before that is you do a complete inventory of your municipal trees. You do a geodesign mapping analysis of what your canopy is and what your urban forest resources are. You do community engagement then to do a small pilot tree planting in areas that you have discrepancies, or where there's not evenness in your tree canopy. That is on our west side. And you adopt policies, you create policies, you do an evaluation of your policies and ordinances, and bring them up to best management practices, so that we're in a general management plan. The timing hopefully will work with that, but otherwise it's policies and evaluation to improve our practices for modern standards, basically, and ultimately develop an urban forestry management plan. So that goes in at the end of the month.
Thank you very much. I would just note that on that, for those who are listening either here or on out in the ether, that this is federal money passing through CAL FIRE. It's from the Federal Inflation Reduction Act funding, because the state funding is a little limited these days. And thanks to Sandra for taking the lead on this one from the City of Sonoma perspective, to be sure.
And I should mention one other thing. Part of the reason why this is so important is because there is no matching requirement for the city. So the idea that there's resources that the city has to put forward to this is not actually true. We have no resources that we had available to put forward to such a comprehensive plan. And so it is meant to be a comprehensive plan that looks at benefits for our community, and the idea is that it benefits priority populations, low-income populations in particular. And so, yeah, I just wanted to mention that part as well.
Well, thank you, by the way, for doing that. That's awesome. It's a terrific achievement. Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Tom, any on the grants update?
Thank you. I too want to congratulate Ed Cedra and David, I think, initially for suggesting this, and but your hard work putting it together here, and just to notice that since we last met, I did come across the Marin County Urban Forest Management Plan, which you're probably aware of, which I'm sure kind of predates what we're doing locally here, but I'm curious to hear what nexus there might be to the transportation. If you could elaborate on that a little bit in our meeting today.
So when I hear transportation, I hear a particular thing, which is again why I need the definition of what transportation means sometimes. So for me, transportation is about active transportation, non-motorized transportation, where people can have the freedom to move through our cities with, have a permeable city where they're free to continue walking and bicycling and skateboarding and getting to the various points to and through Sonoma from whatever community they're coming through, and getting into school safely without the risk of having car traffic or some of the things that Mr. Zimmerman was talking about being a problem. And so this urban forestry management plan, part of what we'll ask for is a corridor network plan and identifying how the city can build on the beginning parts of a network of connected pathways that are safe and car-free, and what would be the barriers that would be a problem that would create a hard barrier versus what we could do to ensure we have continued permeability so that citizens always have the right to, move freely through the city. So that is active transportation concepts. Now, some of that might be reevaluating our gray infrastructure, the road structure, and seeing how we can make them improved and safe in connecting our off-road, like the Sonoma Bike Trail. And some of them might be completely off-road and have nothing to do with roads. But that's the idea, is to figure out how we can have this connected, permeable city that's safe for residents for today and into the future.
So thank you for that. That actually makes me feel pretty good, because that's also how I tend to orient myself to the city, and getting around these days is primarily through active transportation. We have one of the most bikeable and walkable cities in the country, and we have walkability off the charts here, but we can be so much better if we had the connectivity and the corridors that you're describing. So excited to hear that that's underway. I'm curious how this connects to the active transportation plan and the draft list that's been recently presented by the consultants, Fair and Pierce.
So the planning that I just mentioned has to be requested as part of an urban forest management plan. Not all urban forest management plans have that in it. There's urban forest management plans that have some fairly standard things, but good ones are place-based and respond to and develop on the attributes of the community in which they're operating. So for Sonoma, this corridor connectivity makes sense for us. And so we would request that as an element here, partially because we already know our community wants it, our citizens want it, but the community engagement piece will help drive more of those ideas forward. In terms of interacting with the county, these are networks embedded within networks, and so you can't build a corridor plan without understanding the context in which it's situated. And so I'm going to presume, but I don't know because we haven't developed the plan, but you have to look and see what's around you. Otherwise, it's not a corridor. It's not a linked corridor. It's not, it's not connected. This whole thing is about connections.
Well, that's exciting, and it's exciting to hear that CAL FIRE might fund something like this. Let's keep our fingers crossed indeed.
Thank you, Cedra. Other commissioners with updates on grants? Tom?
Okay,
Then
so
I have 3 to report on after Tom.
great. So I have one in a different category. In my county activity as a member of the Transportation Authority Citizens Advisory Committee, I became aware of the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, and then attended the Vision Zero Action Committee meeting 3 days ago. And at that meeting, we got an update on that grant program. And this is a grant program that's being written by the staff at the Transportation Authority. They were successful with the previous round of funding last year and have about $1 million, I believe it is, to do some planning. And most of that right now is going to some of the larger jurisdictions, as I understand it. But there's another opportunity, another funding opportunity that closes on August 29th. And so I put together an overview of what the opportunity might be and mentioned, and I discussed this with the staff at SCTA and said, is there a chance that Sonoma might slip something in time for the deadline? Sent that to Mike Berger yesterday, and I had a conversation with our Public Works Director, Mike Berger, just today. Mike assured me that he is aware of this program and has his hands full without assistant staff right now, that as he's already pursuing 6 other grant opportunities in addition to this new one that I referred to. Mike made clear that he has, as a result of a prior SCTA grant, 1.6 million in funding under the Go Sonoma process. Measure M turning in Go Sonoma, the new measure. And that he inherited that program from the prior Public Works Director, but that they've been through several revisions and now have some plans in place, and he's going out to design for that this year and anticipate spending implementation budget in the next fiscal year. So I was really glad to talk with Mike about this and to make him aware that he had spoken with you about this upcoming grant, and I just feel like we're all coming up to speed on this commission and with what staff's already got in play, what funding resources are available. And again, that's really where I drive some of my optimism about us working together well in the future. We need some more staff, so if you know good qualified people, tell them to come work here in Sonoma. We're a lot of fun, and we care about what we're doing here. So I just wanted to make folks aware of that, and curious to hear if Jennifer might have any input on that new grant opportunity. My concept here was to piggyback on something that might already be happening in another jurisdiction, and to say, you're planning to do a quick build pilot program on what would happen if you made this stretch of corridor, this stretch of highway a little safer. Would it be useful for us to piggyback on another jurisdiction's proposal and have that hired consultant maybe work here in Sonoma for such a pilot project? But again, it sounds like Mike doesn't have the bandwidth to think about that between now and August. I'm kind of assuming you don't have the bandwidth to think about that either. So maybe we missed this opportunity, feeling like we have plenty of other things going on in this sector right now with the Cal grant, if that comes. Fair enough. But also the fact that Mike has the 1.6 million already in the pocket for the capital improvements associated with the Crosstown Bike Trail, the pedestrian crossing at Studley and Safeway, and the behind Sasserini School, the hospital parking lot connectivity there. So those are the things Mike's working on right now, and they're all important ones. I notice that they don't necessarily map up to the active transportation plan priority list, so that's where I'm looking for possibly trying to close those gaps, as it were, in our funding of our priorities and our goals.
Excellent, thank you, Tom. A couple of items that cut across between grants and carbon sequestration as a report. There is CAL FIRE grant money available for some tree planting, some exciting tree planting at the Sonoma Valley High School. There will be a site walk with 2 arborists on Monday with the maintenance director, Doug Wiedemann, looking at the specifics with the proposal for planting in early September of trees. This is funded by CAL FIRE. It will include the first version of a Miyawaki pocket forest here in Sonoma, as well as potentially 7 sister city trees CAL FIRE funded at the high school. In addition, there's a new development to share in the grants area associated with green schoolyards. This is a separate CAL FIRE project funded through the Sonoma Ecology Center. That team has been working on green schoolyard planning at 4 disadvantaged schools in Santa Rosa in what's called the Bellevue School District. 2 of them have encountered challenges with our good friends in the CEQA arena. And so the bad news is we're having to stop work at those 2 schools on green schoolyard in order recognizing the impact on the California tiger salamander. However, that means the money is being reprogrammed with CAL FIRE permission. This is underway at the moment for a Sonoma Unified School to begin schoolyard planning. As of today, the latest I heard was that the focus might well be on Adele Harrison, which is next to the high school. So that's still a little bit in flux with decision makers about where, but it's a couple of hundred, 250K in grant money that may come for some initial schoolyard greening at a Sonoma Unified School. That's still in progress. That's underway at the moment. So that's a couple, and I've got one other one that fits better under trees, so I'll hold it for that, but it's also grant related. Any other comments on grants from the ad hoc or questions of ad hoc members? If not, let's move to education.
Yeah, I just want to point out, I
Philip,
feel
yes, sir.
inadequate, and I should say something. I have nothing to add.
Had 3 or 4 responses, and I'm going to curtail them all.
Philip will be funding our next application.
I could make some comments, but do others have anything to add in the education and outreach area? Commissioner Fogelberg and I have had a number of discussions about the importance of education and outreach. We're planning on a meeting in July. She is now in Europe on an extended working trip in Europe, but we did have some interesting outreach with respect to moving forward with the possibility of activities at the farmers market coming up as we get ourselves organized to do some kind of ad hoc committee work in public outreach at a farmers market once she's back in July. In addition, and an interesting item from this ad hoc, Commissioner Fogelberg and I had the opportunity to meet at some length with the Chamber of Commerce Sonoma Chamber Director, and we were able to interact with Mark with respect to the selection of their climate-related business champion of the year. They had 7 or 8 applicants, all of which had done some very exciting work, and they did select with a little bit of input from our team as to reviewing these applicants. And then the chamber selected Donham Winery out in Carneros as their climate business of the year. So that was kind of exciting, and that was a role for our public outreach within the this commission, working with the chamber. More broadly, the chamber is excited about having a subgroup of their members meet with our public outreach committee on an ongoing basis to coordinate between the business community and this commission in terms of climate action. So that, I think, is a positive development. Anything else on education and outreach?
I'd like to append, that's great news that you were able to meet with the chamber, and I would just add that I look forward to that bearing fruit. I too met, I think I mentioned this last meeting, but if I failed to, I'll repeat myself. I got a chance to meet with Tim Zahner at the Visitors Bureau, and he too is very supportive of some of these activities on this commission, and so we're developing those relationships and looking forward to better collaboration in the future as we enter into the general planning process in particular. So that's good news. And then wanted to mention that last meeting I mentioned the cool carbon calculator and the idea that we might take it ourselves to benchmark and footprint our own greenhouse gas footprint on the commission, and then encourage that as something that the outreach committee might want to consider using as an outreach tool for folks. So I sent that link to you, David and Jennifer, just before the meeting started. You probably haven't seen the email yet, but I did do my homework. want to give credit for doing my homework. Thank you.
You get an A for your credit, and once I read it, we'll see whether the grade. I used to be known as a tough grader in my teaching days, so we'll see how that works.
I'm
the
often late with
building
my
committee.
homework.
Is there any reports from the building ad hoc? Mr. Heineman.
I'll take this one.
Mr. Heineman.
We have to, Tom and I need to expand our conversations with our new ad hoc member. And in fact, we'll probably talk for a minute after tonight about setting up something like that.
And yeah, I'll just add on that we didn't get a chance to meet again, though we did have a meeting just before the last one. And but in preparations for tonight, I did do a little homework here and wanted everyone to know that Governor Newsom, working through the Energy Commission, the California Energy Commission, pulled a requirement which had been in the pending update to Title 24, which would be to do heat pump replacements whenever an air conditioner burns out. And this is something that many of us in the building decarbonization field have been hoping for quite some time. It's just a no-brainer. When your air conditioner goes out, why not replace it with a device that does heating too, and that way you don't lock yourself into an old obsolete fuel type like natural gas. However, the governor intervened, and that's not going to happen as part of the energy code update. I do hasten to point out, though, that the Bay Area Air Quality Management District is actively implementing in our local Bay region the requirement that you won't be able to buy a water heater that is natural gas fired because of the air pollution impacts. Beginning, I believe it's in 27, and a furnace in 29, if I got my dates straight. So these are local requirements. They're not at the state Title 24 level, but we need to get ourselves and our contractors and our community ready for these oncoming requirements that are frankly needed to keep the climate from collapsing. And then one other point I'll point out is that rooftop solar, I have anecdotally that installations of rooftop solar in California are currently down 38% compared to 2023, and that this is the first nationwide market contraction in the PV industry in history. So that's the effect of our new net energy metering requirements that have gone into place, which are making it much more costly to install solar and with batteries. And that is the subject of much attention in the legislature right now. And the PUC, I think, meets on Thursday to discuss this as well. So those are just some updates on the building sector we're paying attention to.
Thank you, Tom. Any other on transportation, on buildings, sorry. Going once, twice, we're going to move to the transportation ad hoc. Do commissioners have comments on the transportation ad hoc activities?
I'm going to grab this microphone again, pardon me. I left one thing off on the buildings though, but I'm going to sneak that in now, and that is there's an upcoming workshop on May 29th to discuss adaptive reuse. There's an architect, these are architects talking about the opportunity for adaptive reuse in buildings, which is probably going to become more important with the shift away from building electrification. Maybe some of the lowest hanging fruit for local jurisdictions to start to pay attention to is the savings that would come from reusing the buildings that have already been built. In other words, the greenest building is the building that's already standing there and just needs to be modified, as opposed to taking it off to the dump and building a brand new building in its place. So hard to get our heads wrapped around that. The codes aren't necessarily there supporting it yet, but the green building programs, the involuntary programs, have set a pathway for that. And Philip and I are going to be talking about this more at our next ad hoc meeting.
Yeah, and keep in mind that the California Building Code is revised every 3 years. It was, last one was 2022, so we are in the process of monitoring what the revisions are going to be for 2025.
On to transportation, as where we really are in the agenda, so thank you for your indulgence. Really nothing additional to report except that this active transportation plan process is underway. I encourage everybody to go to that next opportunity meeting at the farmers market on the 28th. Did I change the date of that again?
28th is what my notes say.
Thank you. At the farmers market and actually get the chance to talk to the consultants. I printed out for myself the list of the draft planned projects and am hoping that our trees committee will get a chance to go over these in some detail to discuss the degree to which this priority list matches up with the analysis that's been done in preparation for the upcoming grant, and to discuss the holistically the rest of our transportation program that this commission is going to be continuing to move forward. And I think one of the members of the public mentioned transit and circulators and things like that, and I can just say that that's one of the issues that Tim Zahner and I discussed, and there's interest in coming up with some creative strategies to fund some local circulation improvement. And so I hope that ends up something that the City Council would be finding very favorable if we can pull that off. So I think this is all good news I'm hearing here tonight, so thank you for all of that.
Anything else on transportation? Seeing not, carbon sequestration and trees. Sadra, anything more besides the large grant you're working on?
The only thing I want to say about carbon sequestration and trees kind of echoes what you're saying about buildings, is that the best strategy for sequestration is to preserve and protect your oldest, biggest trees. And so with some of our tree inventories and some of the work that we're looking at in terms of figuring out what's happening with trees, I just wanted to alert everyone that the best strategy is to maintain, cherish, and love your biggest trees.
In that spirit, I would note a personal story. We have 150-year-old trees at our property, and about 6 months ago, we got this nasty notice from our fire insurance company that trees that were had branches over the roof needed to be removed for fire control purposes. Having an arborist come in, she noted that these branches were of sufficient size that it would probably kill the trees, the entire tree, to remove that many branches. So luckily we were able to tell them to take a hike and found alternative fire insurance. That is not a simple task in the state of California anymore. That's lucky I'm a veteran, and USAA was happy to deal with me. So, but that's the kind of thing which can devastate a 150-year-old, one on each side, Deodar cedars, best we can tell, planted by Sam Sebastiani, because we live near the winery 150 years ago. These are true historic trees for Sonoma on many levels, as well as absolutely wonderful to look out at. So the trees are still there, luckily, but these are the issues that are arising in our fire risk world. Tom?
And I just have a question. Those are on private property. Those will be part of this canopy.
For the canopy assessment, yes, that's absolutely true. It's got to be entire municipal-wide, otherwise you don't really know what's happening with your canopy. Inventory, it's municipal trees jurisdiction-wide. And then, but regulatory issues and ordinances, that's covers, that looks at, of course, your whole city as well.
It remains to be seen what goes into that, but it's up for debate, including by this commission, to influence public policy in this regard, I would assume. I
That's
think a
correct.
number of us feel somewhat strongly about that, I'm gathering.
Right, there's a huge, very important community engagement component of this, which is not at all clear what that means.
Anything else on carbon sequestration and trees beyond what we've discussed so far? Then I think we've covered that. That takes us, unless there's anything else, public comment on the discussion under 3.2. As I recall, we always close these with public comment before I close the item. Mr. Zimmerman, anything to add on the discussion you've been hearing the last few minutes? And you don't need to reintroduce yourself at this point unless you want to.
Probably a couple of dumb questions. When we talk about the grant, CAL FIRE and that kind of thing, are we talking about experts picking the trees, selecting the trees? Would they be deciduous? Would they be, are those kinds of things left up to the experts, or are they spelled out in the grant?
The process is that you must absolutely have technical expertise in forestry people as part of it's a pilot training, so you would have those people helping with identification. And so you have to identify things like what size class or what makes sense. And then through the community engagement process, the community would actually identify what kinds of trees they're most interested in, with expert opinion helping guide and educate in all of that, and it gets mingled. And so
Okay.
it's a top-down, bottom-up approach.
Okay. Follow up to that is just anecdotal. I had a neighbor that had a large tree. I don't remember don't know tree expert either, but actually the tree was on almost on the property line here and off of 5th Street East. And so there was a contention between the person I know and their neighbor as to the health of the tree, whether watering on one side or diminished watering was damaging the tree, et cetera, et cetera. And then an arborist got involved and whatever, and it was just a mess. It became a legal issue and so forth. It was just kind of crazy. I also, because I walk a lot and bike and whatever, we've all seen it. Different trees as they grow, some require more maintenance than others, a lot of pruning, etc. And also, then if the tree lives long enough and it's near a sidewalk, depending on the root, whether the roots go down or spread out, they disturb the sidewalk. And so I've heard all kinds of stories about who's responsible for the condition of the sidewalk after the tree roots do what they're going to do. And I don't know the answer to that, but one person told me that it's the homeowner that's responsible. So again, depending on urban forest versus along a residential street, I see a lot of questions about that kind of thing. So I just hope that obviously that there's great knowledge and planning in advance, so that the money goes to the best causes. Let's put it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your comments.
Can I do an anecdote since everybody's doing it?
Of course.
I just had a landmark birthday, and I want to echo what Cedra says. Just because things get older and bigger, it doesn't mean they're getting worse. They're getting better. I'm telling my wife that, and I'm going to have to do that again.
A landmark, you're 60 now? Lovely. I'm impressed.
At least.
Congratulations and excellent.
News.
I'll just add that, everybody's got anecdotes about trees. I encourage Mr. Zimmerman to if he hasn't already, to take a look at the pre-commission meeting we had with the pros and planning commission about a month ago now, where we got into the details of the questions that he was asking. And so I'm, again, feeling like we've got a lot of eyeballs on these processes and really trying to make them better. I will point out that at that meeting, I was recommending that we kind of look to the county, which was developing a tree protection ordinance and a oak woodlands protection ordinance for the more larger parcels. In retrospect, or subsequent to that meeting, there were so many exemptions added at the last minute, really, after a multi-year, I think almost a decade-long process, that there's actually talk of I don't know if it's been filed yet, but a litigation against the county for failing to go do a CEQA analysis, because the new supposedly protective ordinance is probably actually reducing the existing protections that are in the current or previously standing county level protections. So we don't want to make those mistakes here in Sonoma, and we've got, I think, the right people working on it to make sure that doesn't happen. And we do want to reduce those conflicts that neighbors have. We want to make sure that the guidelines are clear, and so that's something we share with the planning pros and this commission.
And to underscore what Tom said, Mr. Zimmerman, there, at that meeting, the technology that's available for tree surveys and tree information just blew me away. I had no idea how advanced this is, but it's a science. So, and I think we've got the right people involved as well.
Excellent. I believe we're now ready to go to comment, agenda item 3, director comments and announcements. Jennifer.
So we've already talked about the Farmers Tuesday Night Market on the 28th, where SCTA will be there and myself. And then the other item that is coming up that's in between now and our next meeting that is in my head is tentatively we are scheduled for the first meeting of City Council, which will be June the 5th, to actually start discussing the general plan again and have a presentation of the existing conditions. My goal is to have those existing conditions up by Monday because it is over 600 pages. So get those up, allow people to start reading through everything, seeing what information's been collected so far, and begin our conversations with a presentation at a special meeting of the City Council and the Planning Commission. Again, that meeting would be June the 5th. That's really it right now. That's what our focus is on, is getting the general plan update really going and focusing on that, and then with the implementation strategy. So just as a reminder, the general plan will be discussing sustainability, climate change, as well as circulation element, and a lot of other topics that are related, including water, to what we've all been talking about. So stay involved and stay informed.
I'm curious if we're not planning to make this general plan a CEQA compliant. You're not trying to use the CEQA streamlining opportunity. A couple questions. Are we planning in this general plan update to integrate our climate action strategy and take advantage of the CEQA streamlining opportunities that would be available to do so? Has there been any discussion of that? Is that something we want to start to consider, or is there? I think there's good reasons to avoid it, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
So, big picture, we are going to be looking at what that CEQA document is going to look like to streamline projects moving forward. So I am going to be looking at getting the most up-to-date GHG as part of that CEQA based on our, if we're proposing any changes of land uses, et cetera, right? Build it all into a comprehensive document and comprehensive EIR that projects can tier off of, including a future climate action plan that could then tier off. The other is to look at SB 743, which is our VMT, and starting a process in which would identify thresholds and mitigation measures on implementing SB 743, because we are an interesting community and we need to understand our own community and set that baseline ourselves versus base ourselves off of other communities. So that is the plan.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I appreciate that you continuing to use like the generic BACMed threshold of significance for VMT is probably difficult for us to comply with. And so, thinking that through and making sure we continue to do our fair share of greenhouse gas reductions without, making us more vulnerable to developers that never want to develop here, or lawsuits that never make anything happen anyway. So it's a fine line we're going to be walking, but I have confidence we can do it.
Excellent. Any other comments on this? Then we're going to turn to commissioner reports and comments. Item 5 in tonight's agenda.
I'll just add that
Vice Chair Conlon, yes, sir.
looking forward to speaking with, I have a small group of colleagues. We're going to be talking with Jared Huffman, Congressman Huffman, on Friday morning. Some of the sequestration and vegetation management questions.
Good, and I would just note I had the opportunity recently as part of a conversation with Congressman Thompson on as part of a 350.org group, and so we were able to meet directly on Zoom with Mike and press for a number of local issues reasonably successfully. I thought, you never quite know, but that's how it seemed to be a positive development.
And I guess I neglected to mention that Assemblyman Damon Conley also spoke with many of the same people in this group about 2 weeks ago now, and we're looking to follow up with him. He had a number of great questions for us, so we're following up with him.
Good. Anything else in the way of commissioner reports and comments? Then I believe we have reached our point where we can join our families. So I will adjourn the meeting, and thank you all.